how excited I am to go through all this today and just be able to talk to you guys, even though we're miles away from each other.
The technologies we have in front of us to allow us to do this is so important. And we wanted to bring you here today to talk about some of the epic pictures in your career. And I know we gave you a challenge of trying to pick about 5 to 7 of them that sort of defined who you are as a photographer and brought up some great stories. And we want to hear all the great backstories on this. So we don't want to sell anything here. We definitely want to talk about lens choices and things like that, and things you do within the studio to make your clients comfortable, and how you shoot portraits. And maybe towards the end, we give some portrait tips too for simple portraits at home, while we're all in quarantine. So again, we can't thank you enough for giving us your time. I love the fact that it's about 10 o'clock at night there, and it's early in the morning here, about 9:45, 9:50. So I love that we're doing this. I want to start off by giving people a sense of where you got started in photography. I love to know when the first time somebody picks up a camera, and then take us through that journey as you become a professional photographer.
With me, it began from my father giving me a camera as a kid. I was born in New York, born in Brooklyn, and then at the age of 7, we moved down south to South Carolina. And I guess that shakeup made me a very shy kid living in the South. And my father saw that and gave me a camera. And it became my way to express myself, became my hobby, and then it became my love. And now, all these years later, it's still my love.
Mm-hmm. And how do you grow? I mean, did you get education in photography? Did you go to school for photography? Did you learn it on your own? Talk about the steps of education, and then how you sort of worked your way into becoming who you are, this noted celebrity fashion, portrait, beauty photographer.
For me, it definitely started with education, going to art school in Atlanta, the Art Institute of Atlanta at the time, then leaving there and going to New York to work as a photo assistant. And that's really where my education began, as an assistant.
It's so funny because you mentioned that you assisted the wonderful Lynn Goldsmith, a rock and roll photographer, a very accomplished photographer and a pioneer in the rock and roll world. And I'm going to be interviewing her later as part of the Creators Hour as well. So, so you start assisting, and now you're getting your feet wet in the world of professional, but you're not running the show. At what point do you take that leap into saying, I'm going to be Matthew Jordan Smith Photography, I'm going to be on my own, I'm going to run my own business?
It's funny because it was a gradual evolution for me. I was working for a lot of different photographers and traveling a lot with those photographers. And one, her husband was her agent, and she only shot in Europe. I'm in New York at the time, and I'm like the only assistant working for her, going overseas with her. So we were always going all the time in Europe. And one day, her husband came to me and said, Matthew, all the models know you, and they talk about your work. I'd like to see your portfolio. So we go to Paris, and I give my portfolio when we left. And when I come back from Paris, he says, Matthew, I'm your agent from now on. So that's how I found my first agent. Mm-hmm. And began the journey as being a photographer and leaving from being an assistant. But it was gradual. I'd work one day as a photographer, next day as an assistant. So it became to the point where I was shooting so much, I had to stop assisting. And it just began from there. Even my first real job, I was kind of like almost forced into it. I shouldn't say forced into it, but I didn't think I was ready. But this makeup artist saw my work and told an editor about me. The editor called me in for a meeting. I go to the editor, and at the time I'm thinking, I'm not ready. I show my portfolio at the time. The editor looks at maybe half the book and closes it. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not ready. And he says, okay, are you free next week? And that began a long relationship with that client. And it was just a turning point.
So why people, beauty, fashion over any other genre of photography? I know you do a lot of motion work, and we got one of those pictures in the selects here, but why people? Why fashion? Why celebrity?
I'm drawn to people, period. In the beginning for me was all about beauty, like from here up, the face. And I fell in love with just that. And to be honest, that's all I wanted to do was fashion beauty, because the world of beauty, it's timeless. It never gets old. And that beauty work led to my clients who were hiring me for editorial into giving me covers. This is back in the day when it was all models on the cover. And then it transitioned from being models on the cover to being celebrities on the cover. But then I wasn't really shooting celebrities at all. But one day an editor, actually the same editor who gave me my first job, came to me and said, "Oh, Matthew, you do this amazing job with doing beauty. Can you do this on a celebrity shoot?" They had hired this photographer to shoot a celebrity, and the last minute he canceled on them for an advertising job. So they hired me to shoot this celebrity job, and it was a cover, and it was Halle Berry. And that's how it all began. They gave me Halle Berry, then that magazine gave me Vanessa Williams, and then they gave me Oprah, and then it just kept going from there.
You know, I think everybody would probably step back and say, you know, in the world of celebrity, there's the little barrier you have to break, or that hump you have to get over, of the nervousness of being with somebody so popular, how they're going to be, how they're going to act, how much time do you have. So Halle Berry, I mean, that's jumping into it real quick with someone real big in acting. What was that experience like? Rumbles in the stomach, you know, you set yourself up. How do you prepare to photograph Halle Berry?
I was so nervous that day. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember her walking into the studio. We shot in Manhattan, downtown in Soho. She walks in and she had a bad taxi ride to the studio. And I had music playing, and she walked in, and I could actually feel her change. Get her to the set after hair and makeup, and she's a different person. She said, "Oh, I love your music." And from that point on, it was just a great day. And that shoot led to more, and to the point where, like, I saw her a few years ago at a concert, and we connected and started reminiscing about that first time way back when.
So that's a great tip. I mean, setting the ambiance, forget everything else. The shooting will come, but setting the ambiance with nice music and creating an atmosphere. And I've been on shoots with you before, so that's no secret to me. That time we shot in LA with Z7. You know, so that's a great tip for everybody, to just set your people at ease. So have you been working with agents your entire career, or did you get to a business point? Did you have to learn business? I mean, how do you control all that? I mean, that's a big part of being a photographer.
It's a huge part of that. You know, I think working as an assistant was great in so many ways, not just about photography, but about the business. You know, seeing the business from when you don't have the job, how you get the job, then how you go into pre-production, then the shoot, then the post after the shoot. All of that stuff is what you learn by being around it 24/7. So an agent doesn't get you work. There's this misconception that you have an agent and they get you work, and that's not true. An agent handles the work that you bring in. As a photographer, you're always out there, you know, on the front line, pushing to get work, staying in contact with clients. Even here we are right now in this crisis, but everybody is home. Every celebrity, every client you've ever had, everybody's in the same situation. And I've been reaching out to everybody I've ever worked with, some people I haven't talked to in ages, and reconnecting. And this is a good time for that.
Yeah, you know, I think that's another great tip, and another great point is, a lot of times, especially when you work with celebrities time and time again, certain drummers that I work with time and time again, there may be no reason to reach out, but it's just a quick email that says, "Hey, how's your family doing?" And that strikes a conversation. It keeps you in their mind. So it's an easier conversation next time. You're not starting, "Hey, I haven't spoken to you in 2 years. I'd like to work with you." That's another great tip. So what was it like when we call you and say, you know, how long have you been shooting now, Matthew?
35 years.
35 years.
35
years. How hard is it to sort of cull down your body of work into about 6-7 images?
It's kind of impossible. Even as I look through the images, I'm like, oh, I should put that in there. I should put this in there. I mean, because you have so many great moments in your career. It's hard to say what are the 5 to 7 to 10 images that like define your career. It's impossible to do, because I mean, you're every shoot, you're hopefully defining your career. You're always trying to find that next great image every time you shoot. Along the way, you get lucky sometimes.
Before we jump into the pictures, and you don't have to turn around, but over your shoulder is a picture of Tyra Banks. What was your relationship with Tyra Banks when you first started working with her? Was she the big supermodel, or were you part of helping her, you know, in her career, or growing her with your photos?
No, she was brand new when I started working with her. The very first time we worked together, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I was just making the transition from assistant to photographer, and she was just making that transition as well from being an unknown model to beginning to be known. So we were kind of at the same place in our careers at that time. But the first time we shot in my Brooklyn apartment. This is way back, early 90s, 92, 93. We shot in my Brooklyn apartment at 2 a.m. I had been working all day as an assistant. She had been working all day as a model. And we found time after having dinner and then going to shoot my apartment. We all shot. Myself, the makeup artist, her mother, and I.
That's awesome. See what I did there? I snuck in an extra picture. Let me take control here as I tell our producer, Brian, I'm going rogue on him. And let's start up this slideshow of images. A lot of powerful women here, a lot of beautiful women, very talented actresses. Talk about this photo. How did you give us every detail? I want to know everything.
This was a huge job for me. It was my first time shooting 5 big celebrities. It was a secret location. We shot in San Francisco. The location changed like 3 times. This was, at the time, it was this huge movie. And this is the only shoot with the entire cast. The movie was waiting to exhale. It's about to come out. It has Whitney Houston, Angela Bassett, has all these big stars in it. And the author of the book is here in the middle, Terry McMillan. It's the first time for me to meet all 5 women. And yeah, I'm nervous. So we're in this secret location, we're setting up, and I remember this day so well because the first person to arrive was Whitney Houston. So she walks in and she goes over to my assistant and says, "Oh, are you the photographer?" And she says, No, he's the photographer. And she looks at me and she says, "Oh, well, that's different. A Black photographer." So we start laughing about that. So then she walks over and she says, "Well, let me see your music." So at the time, this is back in the days of having CDs on set. So I had this huge thing of CDs I carry around on every job. She goes through about 4 or 5 pages and she says, "We're going to get along just fine." And we did. So then everybody gets there. We're getting together. We're playing my music. We had this synergy, all 5 of us, all 5 of the women and I, we had this energy together where it just clicked. I remember everything about this shoot. It was just incredible.
It's got to be that icebreaker, though, that when Whitney comes in and you guys connect, that must set a tone for the other ladies coming in on set. Because if Whitney is kind of cool with you, that should set everybody else at ease. Now, are they all friends? I mean, they're part of a movie. It doesn't mean they're necessarily friends or very close.
They were
how were they together as a group?
They were friendly for sure. They've been doing the movie for a while, so they were close because of the movie for sure, and being on set and shooting all the time. And there's a lot of energy around this movie. The book was very popular at the time, but it was my first time meeting all of them. But during this shoot, we all connected. As a matter of fact, to this day, with 2 of them, I'm very close, to the point where today I spoke with 2 of the women on this shoot, and that's normal. But that day, and this is like 20 years ago when I did the shot, we all bonded. So this image, the shoot was over and there's a song on, and I'd said, "Okay, we got it. This is a wrap." And then I stopped and said, No, let's do one more shot. And I put them all together. I said, "Just give me a shot with your eyes closed." And the song was playing and we got this image. And then after the shot, they started dancing. I got pictures of them dancing on the set. It's just this amazing, incredible moment. We were all on a high, and I bonded with this whole group this day.
So was it the intent to shoot just this one group shot? I mean, it's amazing that you go through the entire shoot, and then after you get to that last point, hey, everybody jump back in. I mean, that happens a lot. Either that happens like the very first shot, you nail it, and then you go through the whole shoot and you realize, okay, the rest is great, but to get it at the end is even better. But that's just so cool that they were that relaxed throughout the whole process. And then did you know at that time, this is the one, this beats everything I shot at that point?
No, I didn't know it. We actually did, this is a full day shoot. So they were changing clothes. We did singles. We did the author with each of them separately. It was a full day shoot. But at the end, it just felt right. And this image, I just remember it so well. It was just like the culmination of this amazing day, all coming together and them hugging. And this shot right now, it's in the Smithsonian in the National Museum of African American History.
So when you're setting it up and you obviously have all these changes, you got the 5 ladies together here. How, just give us a sense of how you're lighting that, and maybe the focal length lens that you're going to choose, and what aperture are you using to cover the depth of field you may need for the different distances that they may be, as much as they're aligned. You know,
Great
you need
question.
it precise. Where are you with the exposure and stuff like that?
So on this one, I'm right around f8 because I want to have enough depth of field between f8 and 11 to cover all 5 women if they get off point. I have 3 assistants on this job. We have black gaffer tape set on the floor for each of the spots. We test everything. As a matter of fact, before this job, we're testing our situation in New York before flying out to do this job. So I'm using one big light to make sure I get this wrap and this feeling that I love. I used to love using parabolic lights. I still do, but not as much now as I did in the beginning of my career. So this is actually just one main source, a parabolic light, and I'm shooting, at f8 or f11 to get this depth of field. And that's basically it. In terms of lenses, I've always loved my longer lenses. My 105 is probably my favorite lens. But this is probably, I'm going back, because I have a group here. So I'm shooting like a little wider. But definitely for all my singles, I'm that 105 guy all the time. The 85 and the 105. Of course, it could be wider for this shot, but the 85 and my 105, those are my go-to lenses all the time to this day.
Any tension on the set throughout that full day, or was it just smooth sailing the whole way?
Actually, the only tension was when Whitney first walked in. That first moment when she walked in and she says, "Who's the photographer?" We're all like, "Oh." And she walks over and looks at my music. It was a little tension right there until she said, "We're going to get along just fine." I mean, she was definitely the diva in the group out of all the women. But also, she actually also set the tone, because as I'm just thinking about remembering this just now, as we were shooting, she would run off the set and change a CD and then run back. And that was actually great because everybody was like, "Oh, I love this song." And it just had energy the entire day.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. See, I'm glad you just remembered that now too. I can't not ask before we move on to the next picture. Whitney passes.
Yeah.
How when you start to develop these relationships, I mean, were you guys close? How do you feel when you look back on this photo now? Does it mean that much more to you, knowing that, Whitney has passed and things change in life? Talk a little bit about that before we move on.
She passed in LA, and I was in LA actually when she passed, not far from the hotel where she was. And it hit you like a rock. And you start thinking about all the moments you had together, for sure. I was probably the least close of her versus all the other women. With Angela Bassett, I'm very, very close. With Terry McMillan, I'm very, very close. And I know the other 2 women as well. But Whitney was special. I mean, they're all special, but Whitney definitely had this energy, and it was her at her very best on this day.
And she changed the CDs.
Yes, she did.
She changed the music, which is great. Thank you for all that information. That's a great way to get started. One of my favorite people, again, sad she just recently passed too. Talk about this photo of a beautiful singer, a beautiful person, Aretha Franklin.
Aretha is my heart. She is my heart. I shot her for the last 13 years of her life. And I was
going to say, you've had many shoots with her, right?
Many shoots with her. And she is the only celebrity that I've ever known who would only speak to me. She would not speak to my agent at all. She wouldn't let a manager call and book us. She wanted to do it herself. She was very hands-on, to the point of wanting to hand a check in my hand. She was that person. She was very hands-on. And I love her for that because I have all these great memories of her. Now, this day is a shoot that, I mean, I shot her many, many times. So it's hard to say what's my favorite shoot, but this shoot was special for a lot of reasons. So I've been shooting for quite a while at this point and gotten to know her very well. She called me in the middle of the night to ask questions sometimes. So on this day, you know, we're close and I'm shooting her and I'm close to her. And Aretha loved to hear only her music when she shot. So I had my list of favorite music on my iPods. And because iPods what I was using and still actually have to this day, actually, believe it or not. So I had my iPods. As a matter of fact, I have it over here. I have this iPod, believe it or not, with my favorite Aretha Franklin music on. And we played that same mix of my favorite music all the time on every shoot. So this day, one of my favorite songs comes on, and she's like, 2 feet from me as I'm shooting her. And she starts singing. She would always sing during a shoot. So she's singing her heart out. And the whole room is like quiet. We're like having goosebumps, right? And I love the song. So I start singing along with her. She stops. The whole room is quiet. She just stops in the middle of the song. She looks at me and she says, "Jordan, baby, don't sing." I mean, the whole
profession.
Room, yes, you do what you do. Let me do what I do. But the whole room is dying laughing. My assistants, her crew, everybody's dying laughing, including Aretha. So I just keep shooting, and I get these great images of her laughing. And that day was like, it's just this great memory that I would never, ever forget. I've got tons of great memories. I mean, she called me in the middle of the night one night. She's like, I'm stuck on the name of this album cover. What do I call it? Do I call it this or do I call it that? She's giving me these two names. I'm like, it's like 2 a.m. I'm like, am I dreaming? But this is Aretha. This is how she operated. And we had this relationship. Sometimes she would get mad at me and she'd call me and let me know. Sadly, her last year of her life, her last 8 months, we were planning a photo shoot to the point we had scheduled it 3 times and it got canceled each and every time, of course, because she could never make it.
Right.
Even to the point of her very last concert. Her last concert was in New York City with Elton John, a benefit. And she wanted to do the shoot the day after. But she was sick then. And I said, no, let's wait until you get back to Detroit and do it there. And I think about that all the time because I'm like, should I have tried to do that shoot that next day? But she came back to Detroit and she got sick and never really recovered. I think about that all the time. Yeah,
that's, I can imagine. And if any of you tuning in, go to his website, go to Matthew's website, you'll see the series of images you made when she was younger, through, getting a little older. And there's a beautiful portrait of her. It's just so relaxed. It's so peaceful. The eye contact, everything. Are you using like one beauty dish to light her?
I am.
Give us a sense of the lighting here.
One beauty dish. And this is close. So this is me, my 105, 85. It's one beauty dish directly over camera. And I have a reflector underneath. This is my classic beauty light. Simple, no background light at all. It's a very intimate situation. Photography, period, is intimate. And when you have this situation, and I use a lot of V-flats to block off a set. Even if it's a very big studio, I'll block off the set to make it intimate. Because when you have that connection with your client, you can see it in their eyes. And this is what you're seeing here. We laugh, we joke. She tell jokes, I tell jokes, and she'd sing. But when she'd sing, which happened all the time, I knew, okay, at that point, I better get my shots because she's tired. Because when she starts singing, she'd probably lose her energy. And then that's what happened most of the time. But this day was a special, amazing, incredible day.
That's awesome. And thank you for sharing this picture and that story to go along with it. And I adore this picture. It's just so happy, so fun, so inviting. It's Oprah Winfrey, as everybody probably can see. Talk about this. You mentioned Oprah in your opening as someone you photographed many times, and talk
Yes.
about this picture.
So this is funny because this image ties to other images in my career. And again, like with Oprah, I mean, like with Aretha Franklin, I have my favorite Oprah music, again, that I play every time I shoot her as well. Of course, you know, it's a mix of other music, but it's my favorite music I play when I shoot Oprah. So
are you doing some research to figure this out, what her favorite music is? Do you have like her agents?
I am. So I'd have interns researching online what's her favorite music. And people like this, it's easy to find out what's their favorite music. You know, she'd say it on different shows. So I always have that list of music that I know she loves. So this day was a tight day. When I first shot her, we'd have all day to shoot. But, you know, as the years go on, she became bigger and bigger. I'd have 15 minutes. So that's, to this day, what it is. It's like 15, maybe 30 minutes at the most. This day was shooting in Chicago. She had a tight schedule. It's 15 minutes. So I know that going in, and we fly to Chicago. The crew's coming from, half crew's coming from New York, half crew's coming from LA to do this shoot. We're there setting up in a conference room to make a studio. I have a stand-in for her to test my lights on, same complexion and everything before she gets there. So she walks in this day, and she comes in and she gives me a really big hug, but tighter than normal. And then she pulls me back and says, "Matthew, a long time ago, you gave me this picture. And this picture is on the side of my bed. And it means so much to me now." The picture was a Polaroid, actually, from the very first time I photographed her in 94, 95. At the time, she had been given 2 puppies by Stedman, and they were puppies, brand new. And so I took a Polaroid of her holding one of these puppies, and then got back to New York, and I loved the picture. I'm like, this is amazing. I framed it, wrote a letter, and sent it off to her. Never heard a word. So decades go by, and this happens where one of the puppies dies, one of the dogs dies.
I was going to ask, is that where this was going? Because the extra tight hug.
Yeah. This day, one had just passed away, and she told me that she had that picture beside her bed all these years. I never knew she even got the picture, which is funny. I never knew she got the picture until this day. So this day, you know, we had this connection from the very moment she walks in. And as we're shooting, you know, people are telling her, "Oh, you know, you have 5 minutes, you have 5 minutes." And I put on what I think is her favorite song. And her eyes light up. Like in this image, that song's playing. The song makes her light up, and they can't get her to leave. And I'm just shooting away. I'm shooting away. And this is a commercial.
You're going to keep going until someone says stop.
Absolutely.
Right? Really, in that moment, if you think you got 5, you take whatever you can get extra.
If I can get her in a good mood, 15 minutes turns into 30 minutes, which is what I got this day, 30 minutes. And it made the day. She walked out and she's dancing. And it's just one of those incredible, incredible days. But the song that we played this day was this song that is just this incredible, incredible song by Tina Turner. And it's one of her favorite songs. And that song has saved me many times on photo shoots, not only on Oprah's shoot, but on other shoots, because people love this song.
Right.
I think about playing, like, you know, the latest, greatest all the time, but sometimes I'll play older music, and it makes people think about a time in their life or a memory, and then you've got them. And then it's just my job to get them.
Ever want to be a DJ? Is because music seems to be a big part of what you're doing.
Music is always a big part of my life. Always,
I love music.
Always.
I love lyrics. They speak to my life. And I love how, you know, you start off with agents and the people around her crew telling you got 5 minutes, and then you have a 30-minute shoot, which is golden. It's like photographing Dave Matthews, and you only get 2 songs, but each of his 2 songs are 30 minutes long. So, you know, you're shooting more than you typically shoot a rock concert. But when you go back, talk to me about your kind of crew. Just a quick sense before we move on of how many people do you bring on set? You know, name the players in a typical Matthew Jordan Smith shoot.
Well, there's usually like 5 key people: hair, makeup. I like the same people all the time. Sometimes celebrities will have their own people, but even over the years, I know them very well. Oprah's hair and makeup, I've known them forever. But even on my personal crew, I have the same hair, makeup, assistants, and digital tech. You know, those 5 key people that are with me all the time to make sure that everything is right. Now, of course, you know, assistants go on and become photographers, but you had this bond. Like, we just had WPPI in New York City, in Vegas. We had Photo Plus in New York last fall. And I'll see some of my old crew, and when we see each other, we reminisce about, you know, different shoots, because you don't forget those moments. But my crew, I depend on for the tech to make sure that everything is correct. They know what I like, and they make sure everything's there. You know, the lighting's correct. There's gaffer tape on the floor, so I know there's a spot where, in case they come out of the spot where I want them to be, is correct. They know to come in and take a fast meter reading as I'm about to shoot, to double check to make sure everything is consistent each and every time I shoot. I don't believe in guessing. I want everything to be correct. I want a white background to be white. I want, you know, my light to be what I call my normal. You know, you use a light meter, you find out what's considered normal. But then I put in what I consider to be my normal. Like back in the old film days, you didn't run film normal. You'd push it plus a third or minus a third or minus a half. And still today, I do the same thing. I make sure I find out what is considered normal, and then I put in what I call my normal.
Right. That's so funny you bring up pushing and pulling film. I bet you quite a few people don't even understand, you know, what you're talking about. But back in the day, you had 36 frames, maybe 24. You pushed film or you pulled it, you adjusted the ISO, but you had to shoot the entire roll, you know, at that ISO, so it's processed correctly. So those of you that have just become photographers through digital understand how amazing it is to be able to individualize every image at any ISO, any color temperature, anything you want to do, you know, one image at a time. Speaking of crew, though, there's a cool tidbit here of, you know, you had assisted the rock photographer Lynn Goldsmith, but someone else, a Nikon Ambassador, was one of your assistants. Tell us who it was and how she approached you.
Dixie Dixon. Dixie, from the very beginning, was on it. And she came and assisted me. I was living in LA at the time, and just incredible. I knew she had it from the first moment I met her. She was hungry. And that sounds normal, right? But not everybody has that hunger to make it. And you can see it right away. And right away, I saw that in Dixie. And I'm not surprised of her amazing, incredible career today.
Yeah, I wanted to throw that in there because I thought that was an amazing fact. Again, beautiful picture of Oprah. You talk about this motion study a lot when I see you present now. Talk about this photo. Obviously, we're in Japan. What's going on here, and what's your approach to all of this?
Oh, man. So this picture has a lot of meaning for me. You know, I was born in New York City, big city, bustling, a lot of movement, left to move down to the South where it's the opposite of New York in every single way. Then moved to LA, which is a big city, but it's kind of like a big town where it's a lot of movement again, but people are in their cars. You're not seeing people walking around. Then doing this picture, I was debating moving to Japan. Hadn't moved there yet, but I felt this affinity when I got there. I felt like it was New York City in many ways. And to be honest, it still is, and very much so like New York. And I loved it. But I wanted to show the sense of what it feels like to be in a big city, because sometimes you can feel like you're the only person in a big city. So here I am in a new city, and I wanted to show that feeling. So I had to, number one, I had to do a lot of research to figure out how to do this image. Here we are in bright sunlight, and I'm shooting slow motion. And that's kind of hard to do. So I had to first test my idea that I had in my head in LA. And of course, nobody walks in LA. So I had to go to a beach and test out my idea on a beach where people are walking. And then once I figured out how to solve all the problems, shooting in bright sun and shooting at a slow, shutter speed, how do you do that? Once I figured that problem out and got it, I went to Japan, and I went during winter. So this picture's done like, I think it's either the first of the year, like the first weekend of the new year or the last week in December. And I pulled this model who I know. She was actually living in LA at the time as well, but she's Japanese and she went home to visit family. So I pulled her together. We got somebody to dress her. I found out about the light because the light's only here during the winter for like 2 hours. So I had to go in and scout the location, test it, make sure everything worked the same way. And that was really good for me because I found out people in LA walk slower than they do in big cities. So it had to change my entire test. All my data that worked in LA did not work in Tokyo. So I had to retest, change it just a little bit. But once I got my formula down, I could then go in and do it everywhere. So this is the first time where I really nailed it. But it's a lot of production, a lot of time. It took me about a month to put together to get this image. But once I got it, I'm like, okay, now I have this recipe. I've been doing it ever since, and I love it. I've fallen in love with motion ever since this image.
I would assume part of that solution to brighter days is using a neutral density filter. Is that what you were talking about before? That you solved that problem with a neutral density filter? And I would think that this, unlike, I guess you're shooting a lot in the studio, but unlike the studio here, you're probably shooting even more, and your take is even less because this is all experimenting, right? And it's all about the motion. One picture, just things out of your control are out of your control. So you're just hoping those things out of your control kind of fall right into what you're looking for, no?
Definitely. But also there's another component to this that was not in America, because here I'm shooting in Japan and I wanted people walking through my image. So I'm on a tripod. I've got neutral density, I'm having her stay still so I can focus. But in America, if I take a picture, nobody's going to stop. They're going to keep walking through. In Japan, if I have a tripod and they see I'm shooting a picture of somebody, they will stop and wait for you to take your picture, which I did not want to happen. I want them to keep walking through. So I had to figure out how to get through that problem as well. But once I figured all that out, then it worked.
Do you have you learned to speak Japanese since you're in Tokyo, or just a few words, or are you fluent in Japanese?
Definitely not fluent at all. Simasen, Nihongo ga wakarimasu ka? Just I can speak just a little bit, but it's I've got a long way to go. A long way to go.
I should have opened up with konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
So now you continue this motion series. This is an ongoing project for you? Because it's so far from celebrity beauty portrait stuff.
It is. But I believe you got to shoot all the time. Even now, while many people in the world are in this shelter at home state, I'm still shooting every day. I'm shooting pictures of me at home so I can document what it looks like. We're going through a historic period right now in our lives. I want to document all that. So every day, I'm shooting. I've got my cameras right here. I've got my video camera, my Z6 and my Z7 ready to go all the time. I've been shooting every single day. Even though it may be a portrait of me, or maybe it's a portrait of, something around me to show what this feels like. You've got to shoot. People know me.
I think that's another great tip, especially during these times, is, with me, it's birds in the backyard. You got to find something and you got to kind of consistently do it. And outside of these days of work with interviews, that's what I've locked myself into, because I'm learning as I go. I started off shooting really bad pictures, figured out how to trip the camera remotely with, the Snapbridge app, and figured out the timing. And now I figured out some new solutions, and it just keeps progressing on. And at the end of it all, you can look back at it and say, this is what I did during that time. This is how I was creative. But I've seen these motion pictures before and they're beautiful. But now it's one of those, again, it just stops me in my tracks. It's an incredible portrait. There are got to be a lot of moving parts between makeup, styling, your shooting, that all come together. And then just how randomly the paint drips. Talk about this photo. It's gorgeous.
This is one of those happy moments that just happened. So I'm working with this very famous makeup artist. And at first the idea was just to have her, purple with this great, look. And we were doing images just simple like that. But then at the last minute, the makeup artist said, oh, if I pour makeup on her, can you capture it? I'm like, if you pour it where it falls in one certain way, like so on one side of her face, absolutely. So first I'm shooting her without anything at all, just the makeup on. She's beautiful. But then we start pouring the makeup on, and it's every second, every frame, it's, moving down her face. I'm like, just stay with me the entire time. Just so focused on me as we shoot. And she was, and I was shooting and shooting and shooting. And even that's that one little drop that popped on her chin, that just happened. But every frame of this is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. That drop is so unique, though. I think part of that drop helps make the photo.
It does.
It's random, but it's just, again, it's very
totally
inviting.
random.
Certainly,
you can't plan it.
Mm-hmm. Certainly the lashes and the makeup. I guess this is like an airbrush kind of makeup. I mean, how is the makeup applied here?
I didn't watch the makeup as she was putting it on. If she used an airbrush or not, I can't remember how she applied this, because she came out of makeup done. Mm-hmm. We had talked about the look beforehand, but she came out with this beautiful makeup on. And of course, it took her quite a while to make this, like 2 hours or so, hour and a half, 2 hours to make this look. But when she came out, I'm like, oh my God, this is fantastic.
But you go into this shoot with this notion, though, that makeup is going to take the dominant amount of time. It's going to occupy most of the time. No.
Yes, but I'm used to that. I think on all my shoots, it's always like, an hour and a half to 2 hours of hair and makeup on every shoot, especially for a beauty project. I just did one last month before things closed down, literally. And, most of the time was hair and makeup. We were doing just 5 looks for the day, but it took us 9 hours to do 5 looks. That's just makeup only. And that's normal. So I've been doing that my entire career. So it's always been that. And I've always been in love with this. This is how I started my career, shooting just beauty.
Yeah, for decades, we looked at magazine covers or this kind of stuff in magazines, and it would always talk about airbrushing and touching up and things like that. This doesn't look like there was a lot of touch up after the shot. How much post-production are you relying on after you've made a shot?
I don't really rely on post-production. This is definitely retouched, but I think retouching should only enhance a picture, not where you make the picture in retouching. If you see the picture before retouching, it's the same thing, just cleaned up a little bit. So I believe, of course, I'm from old school, so I believe in getting it right in camera in terms of the exposure, in terms of the frame, in terms of the vision you have in your mind before the shot. All those things are so important. And this is, if you see the actual frame by frame by frame, this is exactly what we have.
So 2 hours of makeup time, how much time do you apply in shooting? I mean, are you going crazy here, shooting several hundred pictures or just a few?
I only had her actually for this shot, maybe 15 minutes because of the nature of the makeup. We shot maybe 15 minutes. That was it.
And it's funny because I think people don't understand that on a set like this, you talk about your 5 people and then any additionals that come on. Time is money. Absolutely. And you have to execute quickly. Studio costs. You go, minutes over, you're paying for another half hour, an hour, right? Model, same thing. You're paying a fee, makeup artists. So I guess budget becomes a big issue on the quick shoots. Of course, I also remember our Z7 shoot. Is this the same model that we used when I came out to LA and shot Z7? You know what I remember from that shoot? I had just come from Portland, Dallas, Las Vegas, and then on to you. You were my last stop in LA. It was 117 in Vegas. It was a heat wave. It was 98 in Oregon, and it was close to 105 in Texas. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to go into a studio shoot. I come in, and the air conditioner doesn't work. So it was like blistering hot one day. I remember calling back to New York and telling them, I got to get out of here. I got to go home. No, hang in there for one more shot. But it was fun because if I remember correctly, I was your film director there. I was your video director. But
that's right. That's correct.
But this is gorgeous. Is this the 105 as well?
The 105.
105 micro. So I keep looking at the picture down. I should be looking at you. But let's move on, because now we talk about the motion you did on the street, and you bring it into the studio with fashion in a series of motion shots you're working on right now. This is absolutely stunning. Talk to us about this picture.
So this I started doing in the last year, and I fallen in love with this. And this is the Z7. And it's funny because I couldn't get it the same way before the Z7. But this again is movement. And this began with me actually just doing self-portraits, and figuring out the movement. So I can give direction to my models, because a model's used to doing their poses, but this is not a pose at all. This is actual in the moment. So I want to break them from what's norm for them and show them exactly what I want. So I'm using two different light sources. One's a strobe light, one's a continuous light with gels. And they have to move in a way that feels unnatural. They'll move, and then after they finish their movement, a strobe will go off. So they're moving in a dark room. I have a light that's flickering different colors. I'm using a sky panel as one light source. I'm using a strobe as another source. So they're moving. This is like a 1 second exposure. So in that movement, you're getting this flicker of lights really fast. And at the very end of the exposure, you're getting this pop to freeze. That feels very unnatural for the model. So I always show them first what I want, and then they get the motion, and then we're both moving, both the model and I are moving, and we get synchronized and we get this shot. And I love playing around with this series.
What creates the color in here, and what's your shutter? What's the drag of the shutter? You said a second, was it?
1 second. 1
full
second.
How are you getting all these colors? I mean, that's amazing.
So the sky panel, which is this light that they usually use on a movie set, but you can program it to do, there's a feature called color burst, and you can make it do anywhere from three different colors to 15 colors, all within a short amount of time, 1 second, 2 seconds. So I experiment with my colors to give out just the right colors I want. And this comes from me just experimenting on my own, find out what's the right length of time, 1 second, 2 seconds, a half second, and then get it right. And also I meter everything. On this image, I have a color meter and I have a light meter to make sure everything is precise. I map where I want the model to move. I have gaffer tape again on the floor, like always, to show the model where they can move. And then I give them their motions. Like you can move from here to here. So the sky panel, I program the sky panel to give me the colors I want. You can put in anything you want. Then I say, okay, you have 1 second to do this movement, and I'll change it around. Sometimes we'll do like 2 seconds with like 15 colors, or 1 second with like 7 colors. And that's it.
And it just flashes the light during that second of exposure.
Yes, yes. The sky panels are fantastic.
And then, of course, she comes into the white light. You blast her with the white light that's balanced, and that's where you get the color from. What are you running, about F8? Are you stopping down a little bit to just? I
am. So I'm actually doing F16 on this one.
What, F16?
F16.
It's amazing, yeah. Because I would think then that helps you, execute better and sharper each time, because depth of field would be a big issue if she doesn't hit that spot precisely. Absolutely.
And also auto eye focus, that helps amazingly well with this situation. It's because I'm moving, she's moving. So very often I'm not even looking through, I'm just going through and moving with her to get my image, and it works very, very well.
And you got the music down, so you got your groove down, and and then you sent in this other motion picture. Why is this different than the last one we just saw?
So here I'm just using backlight. So the first one you saw, the one before this, is front light. So the strobe is going off in front of her. Here is a backlight situation. I'm using a soft box, and I have a black panel in the middle, so she's being wrapped around with this backlight, and then sky panels give me the colors, the 3 colors coming from the side. So if you see the shooting, it looks like a very dark situation. From camera view, if you were to walk in, it seems like I'm in a dark room taking a picture of a model, because the light just goes off so fast with the strobe. I've got a black panel over my softbox, which she's right in front of, as a matter of fact. So that light's wrapping around, giving this edge light to her. And then I've got my sky panel to give me the color. And that's it.
That's
a lot
gorgeous.
of fun to shoot. Both of these are a lot of fun to shoot. And it opens the door to you be creative and do anything you want to do.
And the beauty is when you see it and it pops up on the LCD, you know, you kind of make your adjustments, and on the fly, you're seeing this art happen, which is so cool. It's kind of like remote photography. When you see the pictures in the remotes, as you're starting to download the pictures, it's just a great experience. Is your demeanor different when you're working with, just say, general models or Oprah? You know, are you bringing that same attitude to the set, or are you more nervous when the celebrities come in, or are you just beyond that whole, you know, they're just like people, celebrities, you know, and you just, do you treat everybody the same, or is there a different way you approach this?
I treat everybody the same. I think in the very beginning of my career, for sure, I was nervous around celebrities. Now, not so much at all, because, you know, I spend so much time around them. We're all the same. We're all the same. I've talked to a lot of different celebrities over this past few weeks, now going in 8 weeks as we've been on this, you know, shelter in place. It doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's going through the same thing, feeling the same way. And
we are equal in this, aren't we?
We're all equal in this. We're all equal in this. And as we all get over this and start shooting again, we'll all be talking about our experience with all of this stuff. And that brings us together in this connection. It's a wonderful thing. So now I'm the same no matter who I'm shooting.
So you're shooting your own self-portraits. You're documenting yourself here. Before we close out, any tips that you'd have for making simple portraits at home?
Yes. Number one, keep it super simple. Focus on an emotion. We all are going through these emotions right now. We're all feeling something. And this is kind of the secret in photography. If you can make an image feel a certain way, you've got them. So focus on the feeling, make it super simple. Don't worry about having 4 or 5 lenses. Find one lens that you love, have, you know, one body, and just create. Give yourself an assignment every day to make one amazing picture. Whether you're stuck at home or not, find one image to do every single day. That's your assignment. And it's going to make you a better, stronger, amazing photographer just by doing that every single day.
Yeah, I think part of the intent of the Creators Hour is to give so many people inspiration and that energy to, when this is all over and we're free to go back out, we know it's not going to be normal for a while, but to take what we're learning now and apply it. And if you can apply it at home to get started, great. And then you take it to the streets or wherever you're going to go, you know, once this is over and we can move freely again. It's just, it's so important to be inspired. And you have done that over this last hour. These are great stories. You and I, Matthew, we've known each other for quite a while now. We are brothers, and you know, we work together quite often. So we can't thank you enough for giving us your time, giving Nikon your time. You're an incredible ambassador. You're an incredible photographer. But people tuning in, go to his website, Matthew Jordan Smith, and just check out his work. If you haven't seen the body of work, they can see you. They can find you on Instagram as well.
Absolutely. I'm very active on Instagram.
Matthew Jordan Smith.
Yes.
At Matthew Jordan Smith. Beautiful. And again, we can't thank you enough for giving us time. I know it's time for bed for you as we get into our day. But the Creators Hour, ladies and gentlemen, again, here to inspire, here to educate. We've got so many cool things going on. We've got challenges online. We've got 2-minute videos from ambassadors. We have other interviews that are scheduled. So go to the Nikon USA site in the Creators Hour website section, and you'll find all this great content. And the good news is you can play it back if you missed any of the segments. So we will keep some content up online. And if you really want to dig in, free Nikon school classes online through the month of May. We just want to keep you inspired during these challenging times. We thank you all for tuning in. For Nikon, I am Mike Corrado. Everybody out there, please be safe.
Arigato gozaimasu.